So my name is Jane Hampton Cook, and I'm the author of several books, including a couple of new ones. And I've been writing patriotic books of late, especially because in 2026, America will celebrate our 250th birthday. And I'm concerned that not enough people will really understand or appreciate the founding of our nation and the American Revolution. So I've been writing different types of books about the American Revolution to appeal to different people. You know, so like if you like a mystery book, one of my new books is a mystery called War of Lies, when George Washington was the target and propaganda is the crime. And then I have another book that's launched today on Amazon called Fireworks for Independence, Virginia's Gift to America. And it's a children's book, but it tells you how we got the tradition of launching fireworks on July 4th.
Oh, good.
Where it came from. So I'm trying to give a little something for different tastes in reading. You know, a history mystery with War of Lies, and then this children's picture book called First Fireworks for Independence.
That's great. I'm glad we're doing that because it needed to be right now with this. This is supposed to be Freedom, Liberty. No, next month is Freedom, Liberty month. This month is called. I put down. What was this morning? I put down on Facebook. I forgot what I put on my Facebook wall. I should get that right now. I forgot what I put up there. Go ahead and continue talking though. I'll get that.
Sure. Well, so you know, like when we have July 4th every year, the most common way Americans celebrate July 4th, and July 4th is called Independence Day,
right,
because that is the day that the Continental Congress released the Declaration of Independence. They announced it to the world. And so, you know, I wondered, well, how did we get fireworks? And what I discovered is that Virginia, a group of Virginians, about 100 of them, had gathered in Williamsburg, Virginia in May of 1776. And they officially announced that they were leaving England. They didn't use the word Declaration of Independence, but they were cutting their ties with England, and they wanted the Continental Congress to do the same. And they were really at their wits' end because the governor of Virginia had been raiding and pillaging farms in Virginia. So there really was no law and order at this time. And so then they were so excited to say goodbye to England on May 15, 1776, that the next day, May 16, 1776, they had a parade.
Right.
They had a feast for the soldiers, and they launched fireworks, which were called illuminations. So what's kind of cool is that fireworks for Independence actually predates the Declaration of Independence by about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And so then Philadelphia and Boston had fireworks, you know, the next year.
Okay. This month, here's what I said. For this month, because July 4th, actually, the month of July is Freedom Liberty Month. Well, because the American Flag Day, it's called Spirit of Faith of respecting the American Flag Month. There you go. So that's what it is.
Yeah. That's right, because today is Flag Day.
Right.
And where we get that is on June 14, 1777.
Right, that's correct.
Right, the Continental Congress adopted the first official flag.
Right.
And they described it as a flag with red and white stripes and 13 stars.
Because 13 colonies. Right.
Because 13 colonies, but they were called states by then.
Right.
So they, because they said goodbye to calling themselves colonies and replaced it with states.
That's correct.
And for their first flag, that's all we really know about that flag. Like, they didn't mention Betsy Ross designing it or sewing it at that point in time. But that was the first official adoption of a flag.
Right.
And there were other flags that had come before that. And then, of course, as new states entered the United States, stars were added for a while and stripes were added for a while. Then they realized we can't have 20 stripes
Right.
on the flag. It's too big, so they decided to just add a star.
Right.
And to keep the original 13 states at 13 stripes. So that's how we got our flag for today.
Right, exactly. So people don't even, they don't even teach you that in schools anymore. They don't teach the kids this in school in classrooms. They don't teach this in public schools right now. All all they're talking about is sex, gender, or equal rights. Everybody has an equal opportunity to win. There's no loser at all. If it comes to math or science, or it's everybody's equal now. There's no competition anymore. That's all gone away.
Yeah, and it's really sad because there's a lot about our patriotic symbols and things that gets lost. So I noticed that near the end of the Revolutionary War in 1782, Congress gave us the Great Seal of the United States with the eagle, and then they decided to add virtues to the colors red, white, and blue.
Right.
And they decided that those colors meant something. And I think they didn't do that on Flag Day because I'm not sure they really understood the cost of liberty. I don't think they really understood the sacrifices that people were going to be making to achieve independence and achieve liberty. And so they gave the color red hardiness and valor, and they gave the color white purity and innocence, which kind of reflects their desire for children, the innocent among them. And then blue means perseverance, justice, and vigilance or watchfulness. And so those colors meant something to the founders. Those virtues really meant something. And one thing I noticed when I was writing War of Lies, my mystery book about George Washington and who counterfeited his letters, someone forged letters in his name and published them. And so the book is about a mystery of who did that. I have 4 suspects, and it's a good whodunit.
Right.
But what I noticed is that the word vigilance, which is one of the virtues for the color blue, that word was used a lot back then.
Right.
Because they had to be watchful. They had to watch their camps to set up guards on the front and back and sides to protect the armies as they marched. And, women back home and children back home had to be watchful because a lot of times the British would come along and they would, demand food, and they would take crops and things like that. And so there was a need for vigilance. And so that's and I think it's still a good word for today, to kind of watch over things, and take care of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got to be vigilant right now with especially what's going on in the White House. I mean, talk about the corruption. Talk about our liberties, our freedom, our liberties of justice, just not just our freedom, but the judicial system, our State Department, our Justice Department, our law enforcement department of the FBI. They are corrupting. They have corrupted the Constitution. They have completely destroyed it. They have done this, folks. They have done it.
Well, and one of the things I discovered is that corruption was actually one of the reasons for the American Revolution.
Right.
John Adams talked about how judges in Massachusetts had been bribed, and that you could bribe a judge to get an outcome of the case that you wanted. And that what happened is that for the longest time, the colonists would pay the salaries of their judges, of their governors. But then King George III, when he became king, within a few years, he changed that system, and he made it so that the judges and the governors and the officials got paid by him and not the people. So those judges and those people in power were more loyal to the king or to the king's, the nobility, the elite that surrounded the king, than they were to the people. And so John Adams really talked about that corruption was one of the big problems they faced. They had gone from a a moral society with, the people paying the salaries, and then things changed on them. Their whole system, their institutions changed. And that was definitely, corruption was something they were worried about. And when they wrote the Constitution, they put bribery and treason in the impeachment clause.
Right,
so
they
they
sure
were really
did.
concerned, and they were one of the biggest fears George Washington had was that a president or an official would be corrupted by foreign money. That somebody might be bribed by money from outside the country, and then that person's loyalty would be to that money, to that country or who gave them the money, not to the people of America. And so Washington told General Lafayette in 1788 that if that were to ever happen, that whoever the person who had been bribed was someone who was already in the last stages of corruption. That it wouldn't have been the first thing that they had done if they were taking money and then, doing things for that money rather than, serving the people. So it was something that they were concerned about.
Yes.
And, a lot of people are aware of the different things that are going on now. I think there's more awareness than there was a year ago even. And so, we've seen times where there has to be reforms of different departments and institutions and things like that. So that's happened in the past too, where
Yes.
we've changed things because we see that corruption has infiltrated, different organizations.
That's correct. This is exactly what's going on right now. I mean, the corruption and this lawlessness that we have in this country, they are destroying it they're destroying our freedom. They're destroying our business. They are coming in and doing and being the Gestapo of what you just talked about, King George. By the way, that's exactly what happened. Liberty versus tyranny is what it is.
So after you're familiar with the Boston Tea Party, right?
Yes, I am very familiar with it. Yes.
Yes. So in December of 1773, the colonists took the tea off the ship.
Yep.
They dumped it in the harbor. And so a lot of times people will refer to the Boston Tea Party as, a protest, which it was. But what happened afterwards is what was really concerning. The king was so mad that he shut down the economy in Boston. Within a few months, Parliament passed a set of legislation that said that if you lived in Boston, you could no longer buy or sell goods on ships. That they shut down the economy, and then the king replaced the governor
Right.
of Massachusetts, who was a civil governor. He replaced him with a military general.
Right. Also, what happened was too, they put tariffs on the tea. That's what they did. The people didn't want to pay the extra tax. They didn't want it. It was it was taxation against representation. That's what we did.
Right. They didn't have representation in Parliament. And I wondered why the colonists didn't push harder for having representation in Parliament. And after kind of reading different people's words on that issue, George Washington's, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, their assessment, John Adams and Samuel Adams, part of the problem was because it took 6 weeks for a ship to sail from, America to England, and maybe you could do it in 4 weeks, but it often was 6 weeks. That took too long. So even if the colonists had had someone to represent them in Parliament, they wouldn't have had enough time to get input on legislation from the colonies so that they could, help make a better vote in Parliament. It was because the distance and the technology was not advanced. That's why they really preferred independence over pushing harder for representation, because it was just too far away. England was just too far away. And I even read a sermon or two that talked about how God put the Atlantic Ocean between England and America, which was a sign that he didn't intend for them to be governed together. It was kind of humorous today to think about it that way, but that's how they thought about it. You know, they saw themselves a lot like the Israelites in the Old Testament, you know, and they compared King George III to Pharaoh, and who wouldn't let his people go, wouldn't let the people go. And so there are a lot of the sermons back then talked a lot about Moses and the Exodus. And they wanted to govern like Moses, because Moses God gave Moses a plan for a representative type government, a Republican form of government, where the tribes each had leaders of their tribe, and then they reported, you know, to Moses. And so that's where the colonists looked to as kind of the ideal model, was a representative government, which is what we ended up with.
Right. I have a question for you. Are you a mom?